A warm welcome to you all to the Maritime Standard webinar looking at the marine insurance sector. The theme of today's webinar is Reshaping the Future of the Marine Insurance in a Post-Pandemic World. We've covered many different areas of the marine business during the webinar series, so it's good to finally get to look at what is a vitally important component of the marine world. We're fortunate to have an absolutely top-class panel with us today to discuss the key issues that have been affecting the industry during the pandemic. I'd like to introduce them to you. Dr. Tarek Seif is the General Secretary of the Insurance Federation of Egypt. He's an insurance expert with more than 25 years experience in various aspects of the business as a practitioner, consultant and trainer. Mr. Satyajit Tripathy, who's the General Manager of the General Insurance Corporation of India, obviously one of India's most foremost insurance players. And he's General Manager for a wide range of aspects of the company's insurance business, but including marine and aviation, as well as agriculture, motor, and other areas. Welcome also to Mark Cracknell, who's the Managing Director, Marine and Cargo Division, Marsh JLT Speciality. Mark's hugely experienced. He's had 35 years experience in marine insurance markets, working for various well-known names in London. And with Marsh's acquisition of JLT in 2019, he's pleased to be back at Marsh, where along with some broader client relationship duties, he heads Marsh's JLT Specialities UK P&I team. Another P&I specialist, Amir Mosadeghi, is Chief Executive of the Islamic P&I Club, and Amir has started his cooperation with the club since the establishment of Islamic P&I Club, and has spearheaded its success over many years. In 2015, he was nominated as the club's CEO, and has since then taken the club into new areas and new markets. Julien Horn, portfolio underwriter with the TT Club Mutual Insurance Company, covers the Middle East, Africa, Turkey, and the Eastern Mediterranean. Another really experienced practitioner, Julien's been with Thomas Miller Group since 2003, initially working for UK P&I Club, but in 2020 he returned to London to lead underwriting for TT Club in the Middle East, Africa, Turkey, and the Eastern Med regions. Captain Zarir Irani is Chairman of the Board of Directors at Constellation Marine Services. He's also a current board member and immediate past global president of the International Institute of Marine Surveying. And last but not least, we have Bimal Bhatia, who's a director at the Nasco Group of companies. And Bimal has been working in the marine insurance field for over 30 years and has been pivotal to Nasco's development in the UAE and the broader Middle East region. So I'd also like to mention our sponsors. We're very grateful to their continued support, because without them these events would not be possible. So I'd like to say thank you very much to Abu Dhabi Ports, ADNOC Logistics and Services, CSP Abu Dhabi Terminals, and Islamic P&I Club. And also I'd like to acknowledge our audience, wherever you are in the world listening in this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are, you're warmly welcome. And it's good to see so many of you signed in to what I hope will be an informative and an interesting session, looking at this particular element of the marine business. To get things going, I'm just going to ask each of our panelists in turn one single question, just to get the ball rolling. And I'll start with Dr. Tarek Seif. Dr. Tarek, what do you see as being the single biggest impact on marine insurance of the COVID-19 pandemic? What's the biggest change we've seen as a result of it?
Yeah, actually, you know that the COVID-19 broke down in China. China is the biggest hub for shipping over the world. China dominating about 22% of imports and about 70% of shipbuilding industry. So the impact was very severe by lock down many industrial factories, by the demand for insurance company has been dramatically reduced. So I think this is the main impact: the drop in the business, the drop in the numbers of marine insurance, the gross premium written over the world. Also, there is a change in the risk characteristics itself, like accumulation. There is high accumulation in ports because many clients they ask it to extend the cover, to extend the cover in port of destination or port of loading. So this is create high accumulation, unknown and unexpected accumulation for marine insurance business. So to summarize, the main impact of COVID-19 on marine insurance and maritime industry, it is about dropping in gross premium written, a higher accumulation than before. Also, there is some challenges regarding to the business model itself and how to serve the client with social distancing, with borders control, and with the bad situation in the global economy. I think this is create a high challenge for more digitalization, not only in issuing policies or certificate, but to find solution for surveying, for serving a client, for handling some aspects of claims without face-to-face interaction between different parties in the maritime industry.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Seif. Mr. Tripathy, what for you has been the single biggest impact?
Good afternoon to everyone. I don't have a much differing view from what Tarek has actually mentioned right now. For us also, the single most biggest concern has been the accumulation of risks at the port and the movement of cargo because of the enforced situation for the pandemic. We have seen some kind of hardening this year of the rates also, but despite that, movement of cargo and accumulation at various ports is the single largest concern for all insurers and reinsurers. And we are finding that it is definitely a concern, and it is not going to reduce in near future. It is likely to remain there for a certain period of time, and will take time when the pandemic is fully out of the overall situation. Then only we can see a development on this. Otherwise, this is, yes, one significant reason and for the marine insurers.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tripathy. Mark Cracknell, what's your perspective? What do you think is the biggest impact so far?
Well, two things really, Clive. One, I've been struck by the resilience of our client. I'm speaking here of ship owners and operators, which, although marine and cargo is in my title, I'm really a marine and ship owner focused person. But I've been surprised by how resilient our clients have been throughout the crisis, and I've also been kind of pleasantly surprised by how well the insurance industry has responded in terms of. Dr. Seif was talking about the sort of diminished ability to service clients, but actually, goodness knows what we would have done 10 years ago without things like Zoom and the ability for us in London anyway to close business electronically through things like PPL. Those are my two key observations.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. Amir Mosadeghi, what would you say from your perspective has been the single biggest impact?
Thank you very much, Clive, for inviting me on the Maritime Standard. In fact, this current lifestyle and situation is totally changed, and there are so many things that have impacted the industry. In our point of view, and as a liability insurer, definitely the pandemic goes for the crew members, and the risk on them is much more higher than other things. And definitely that was one of the main concerns we had during the beginning of the pandemic and even till now. The lack of ways to assist the crews in terms of any assistance that they need, claims, whatever, so on. So this is what can be assumed as one of the important things.
Okay, thank you very much, Amir. Julien, from your TT Club's got a very particular sort of portfolio approach. What's been the biggest impact from your perspective?
Well, thank you, Clive. I mean, we're really talking about two industries here today, aren't we? We're talking about the marine insurance side, but as Mark said, we're talking about the shipping and transport industry, and both of them have had to react in a way that they couldn't have expected and probably hadn't planned for. So the resilience, I think, is a large part of it. We've probably moved the principles of working from home or things like electronic release of cargo and documentation forward 10 years overnight, or we had to. With limited planning. And I think that is something that both the industry from an insurance industry, but from a shipping industry, has had to adapt at speed and put processes in place. And that's been a challenge, but it's one that the insurers and the industry have had to work together on to make sure that the process were understood and put in place and were able to serve the interests of cargo keeping going and keeping moving around the world. The ports have had to react in the same way.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Julien. Captain Irani, what would you highlight as being perhaps the single biggest impact?
Hi, good afternoon all. Thank you very much, Clive. My personal view, being somebody who has been going on board ships for surveys, I think the single biggest impact, and it has impacted the insurance world tremendously, is crew morale. Crew morale and the motivation of those on board to do a diligent and an absolute professional job has, in my view, deteriorated considerably because of obvious reasons, which probably somebody will bring it up. But we've had things like whistleblowers, we've had things like people putting their foot down, not sailing, sabotage with relating to cargo, ship machinery, etc. So these claims weren't there 2 years ago. They've just been there, and there's been everything linked with crew morale, and it's to do with the impact of them going home, signing off timely, what's going on with their families, etc. So there's a lot of that playing out, and I think that we can put a finger on as an impact on the insurance premiums being claims being paid out to an extent which may have gone up in my view.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure crew issues will be a key theme. Last but not least, Bimal, somebody based in Dubai for a long time. What's the biggest change that you've seen?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Well, Clive, to tell you frankly, when it comes to direct business on the marine side of it, it was more an administrative challenge to manage and to take care of it than the real claim side of it, because the normal thing, everything was running pretty normal. But the only thing was that initially when the pandemic started, that was the administration of challenge. And Julien and our friend Amir, as he rightly said, it was a lot, of course, P&I was, I think, more directly involved than the marine cargo insurers, actually. So I think we all got used to the lifestyle now. It's a new way of working. We are all working from home. Doesn't make a difference whether it's the office or anywhere we can operate from. So we have really learned new lessons with pandemic. So I think we could carry on for some more time as the things are going.
Okay. Thank you, Bimal. Thank you all for those opening remarks. I think that sets the scene quite nicely. I'm sure a number of the themes within your answers we will come back to. So I'm just going to ask each panel a question in turn and go around the board, as it were. I'm going to start with Zarir Irani. Zarir, have you seen any particular trends in the way claims are addressed and surveys are tended or losses adjusted? And what have been the main challenges and how are they being overcome by your sector?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Clive. If I have to put a finger on what's changed is, like everything else in the world, claims and claim handling has gone local as well. So the syndrome of surveyors flying down and expert witnesses coming down has deteriorated significantly, and it has probably had an impact on the way the claims are managed and how long they've been lasting in terms of litigation. So litigiousness of claims have reduced. Those companies like ourselves who had a link with the legal and the maritime underwriting hubs like the Lloyd's, other underwriting hubs have had a good shot at it. With us being familiar with the markets, we have built up trust over the years, so that has benefited some of our side of the business. And going local, being available, and having the trust of those underwriters and claim handlers has been the biggest change that I feel, and it's not just in our region in Dubai, it's everywhere with travel restrictions, etc. Underwriters and claims handlers have gone looking for those local companies, those local service providers to the underwriting and claims world who have had trust equity built up, have gained. So in my view, it's been a positive for a relatively small company like ours. I don't know whether the bigger boys in the surveying world have said would say that, because there have been some heads that have rolled in the process of this. So it's a horses for courses, but that has been the biggest impact in our side of the world with relating to the claims perspective.
Yeah, and are there still some challenges that you feel need to be overcome?
Yes, the challenges have been getting access to the interviews, to getting on board, because there have been cases where we've been not allowed inside the accommodation, especially last year when things were heated up, etc. So in January, we took a stand, and all our surveyors have had both their jabs and are all, so to say, vaccinated. And we're actually putting that out to our clients to get the confidence that we are all right to come on board. But the challenge is to get access to interviewing people, to actually go deep into the matter of a claim, collecting evidence, because of the restriction and the phobia people have of allowing outsiders coming, has been in our world a significant challenge.
Okay. Thank you very much, Zarir. I'll come now to Amir Mosadeghi, Islamic P&I Club. How have you been able to make a difference to your members given the current state of the pandemic? I mean, how have you interacted with them to meet their particular needs as they've arisen during these very difficult times?
Let me say that we as Islamic P&I, through the history as the only P&I provider in the region and within the Islamic countries, always we try to have close contacts with the clients and assist them for their requirements by hiring the experts team as well as the competent surveyors and correspondents all over the world. With regards to the pandemic situation also, our team have responsibility, even more than always, to keep themselves constantly updated about all marine insurance aspects related to this matter, and to be able to be updated the members and give them accurate knowledge from the law regulations and protocols, especially when their vessels calling different ports, through our associates like the correspondents and monitoring and responding to the different needs of the clients in different parts of the world. Okay, and when you reflected on the way P&I clubs generally are operating at the moment, has the ability of these clubs to use common sense and discretion, given the current pandemic, been applied in an effective and consistent manner, would you say? I mean, are we seeing a consistency of approach amongst the P&I club community? Let's say, I believe the ship owners and especially crew members, that have faced and are facing the real difficulties in this situation, especially when it goes to the crew casualties. For example, we had a crew claim in Brazil, which the crew member admitted to hospital, and then he had to stay there for more than 2 months in order to get back home because of all the pandemic difficulties. During the pandemic and mainly the lockdowns, the insurer hands also were very tight in terms of proper fast response, as Zarir mentioned, to the claims especially, as well as the condition or loss prevention survey. But as the insurer, definitely we didn't have any other choice to manage such kind of things. Majority of the insurance companies have tried to adapt themselves with this situation. So we are trying to do the things as well as the others.
Okay, thank you very much, Amir, for those thoughts. Mark Cracknell, I suppose a very broad question, but what questions has the pandemic raised about the type of insurance cover that ship owners and operators require? I mean, have we seen any reevaluation as to the the type of cover? I suppose it's a fairly fundamental question, but I don't know if you're on mute, Mark, but I can't hear you at the moment.
I unmuted myself and then remuted myself by accident. Sorry about that. But
Times.
I think that we haven't seen a great deal of demand for different products. I think, I mean, I would endorse the comments from the previous speaker. I think the clubs have broadly done what they can to help in a very difficult situation. And most of our clients seem broadly satisfied that they've been supported as far as it's possible, both from the perspective of the response of the insurance products, but also the practical assistance that they've been able to give. But we haven't seen any demand for different types of products.
Does that surprise you? I mean, do you think that perhaps given the...
No, it doesn't really, because, I mean, a lot of this, I mean, it may be a slightly unpopular thing to say, but a lot of this is more operational than risk-based. I mean, there is a risk element to it, but a lot of the complications that have arisen for our clients have been operational challenges and don't relate to sort of risk transfer.
Okay.
Correctly.
So I mean, I have read somewhere that that there's a perception that the risk landscape has changed. From what you're saying, you don't see the risk landscape changing particularly, or if so, how is Marsh responding to the changing risk profile?
Well, I mean, again, if we're talking about P&I, when we, a lot of the discussion we've had just now has been in respect of crew, and crew insurance is broadly picked up by the P&I clubs. At the moment, whereas the markets generally are seeing increasing tendency towards, in fact, a fairly universal tendency towards the exclusion of COVID liability under most insurance policies. That's not the case for certainly international group P&I cover as things currently stand. I think if that exclusion was in place, then we might be looking at, we might be seeing demand for people who want to explore the possibility for cover for that kind of exposure, but currently it exists within the within a P&I club entry.
Okay, all right. Thanks very much, Mark, for those comments. Dr. Seif, obviously Egypt's a hugely important market. What have been the implications of the pandemic for the marine insurance sector as experienced by your members in Egypt? How have your members been responding to the issues raised as a result of the crisis? What have you been seeing on a local level within your particular association?
Yeah, actually, the main challenge in Egypt was the business model, how to solve our client in pandemic time without touching the quality of the service and without touching the ability of insurance company to offer the cover. So many insurance companies, they invest more in IT solutions and trying to issue the policies using the web-based application and to reach the client without any face-to-face contact. But I think we still have many improvement areas regarding to the claims process, because most of electronic solutions now are focusing on issuing policies on some pre-underwritten and pre-rated policies, but we need more investment on the claim side, how to handle the claim side, how to offer a fully fledged solution for insurance in the pandemic era to serve the client from applying for insurance till receiving a claim and maybe the subrogation process as well. So I think this is the main response by the market, that they have more and more e-solution to underwrite and to issue policy electronically.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Tripathy, I mean, how has, looking at your particular marine business and the ship operations that you're involved with, how would you see the risk profile changing, and how have you been responding? And what advice would you give to ship owners to make sure that they've got the insurance cover they require?
If you are referring to particularly to the pandemic period, we haven't come across any significant trend from the industry requiring specific kind of coverage for the cargo as such. There are concerns from the insurance companies and the reinsurance companies overall, but a distinct trend in the subcontinent market or in the Indian market is not yet visible to us. But yes, I can say one thing, that if there are specific requirements from various ship owners or from ports or from other cargo handlers requiring specific coverage for storage of materials, specifically those kind of materials which are required during the pandemic, like your PPE kits, like your chemicals for sanitizers and other things, and extended storage for all those things. As and when those things are required, we are geared up to meet those challenges. But yes, in the Indian market and the ports, we haven't come across any significant change or deviation from the established practices that we have already have in this market. That's our observation as of now.
Okay, and have you seen any recent changes? I mean, are things changing in recent times, or?
There are some concerns, as I have already said, regarding transportation getting delayed and transportation getting accumulated at various ports. Except that, we haven't come across specific requirements from carriers or from cargo handlers. No, not yet.
Yeah, Julien, coming to you now. What are the most important things that port and ship owners need to do to optimise their insurance cover? And what questions should they ask of their providers to make sure they don't face any unpleasant surprises?
Well, I mean, the beauty, I think, of working for a mutual or a club type environment is that we have this close relationship with our members, and so there's a constant stream of advice and support and loss prevention that we put out there to really try and inform our members and keep them up to date as much as we can on the challenges being thrown at them. So that's something that communication is ongoing, and yeah. If you ask your average claims handler, they would say that a proportion of their time is not spent on claims handling, it's spent on supporting and advising the operators, the members, the ports, about the changing environment and how to react to it. I mentioned the electronic documentation side of it. That's something that we spent a lot of time and had a lot of queries from our members. When it comes to cover, I really go back to the point that Zarir and maybe Mark made. It's a dividing line between an operational cost and actual fortuities or things that are going to be covered under the insurance. For a port, for a P&I club, there are certain aspects that are going to be either operational costs or they're not accidents that either cause legal liability or that cause loss and damage to their assets. And once you go outside of that, insurance is not always going to be the solution. Adapting your procedures and reacting to the environment and working with your customers is going to be the biggest part. And whenever things change, people look to adapt their procedures, improve their procedures. And when they change at the speed they did in Q2 last year, people were really challenging their insurers to provide a greater level of support. It wasn't always about cover. It was about support and understanding.
Okay. Thanks very much. Bimal, coming to you. Nasco, obviously a big group. When you reflect on last year in terms of your cargo, your whole business, what impact did it have on in real terms on the business? What trends were you seeing, and how have you been responding to adjust to those different commercial pressures?
Clive, as Mr. Tripathy just mentioned, and also same thing as Mark said, we haven't been greatly affected, and the business in principle, especially on the marine cargo, all the lines have been working pretty well, because everything is required, by the consumers. So literally everything has been coming in. Of course, exports from the UAE especially were affected a little bit, but imports have been pretty standard. So most of our clients we have seen, they're hardly affected, especially the foodstuff side of it has been doing extremely well. And there are quite a few lines which are rather improved than instead of going downward. So we are really not affected very much when it comes to the marine cargo side of it. And marine hull situation, I think all of us, we are pretty much aware what's happening in the markets at the moment.
Have there been any sectors that have been? I mean, I'm not an expert in the market, but I mean, for example, I'm in the super yacht sector, or have there been particular sectors where you have actually seen an impact?
Well, there are a few, as for the marine cargo, as I mentioned, is concerned, at least we are not affected at all. We have been doing pretty standard as it comes to, and also it depends very much on the relationship with your clients. So on the marine cargo side of it, nothing to mention. But on the marine hull side, the markets have been difficult. Yes, the crew changes have made some effects on the P&I clubs. That has made some difference, and mainly it's a P&I related affair. So again, in general, the market has been difficult on the marine hull side, but that's a different issue altogether. Over there, the premium levels have gone high. Definitely, the owner are being affected. So all those things.
Yeah, thank you, Bimal. I mean, the crew change thing, as a number of people have mentioned. I mean, Amir, looking at that and other issues, what lessons do you think have been learned by the marine insurance sector, and what's going to be needed to put in place going forward? What would you say are the key lessons that the business has learned?
Well, I think most of the vessel owners, the operators, I think they have done their due diligence. But we are in such a situation at the moment that one never knows due to what the situation is occurring. If one gets it and other they get it, the vessel needs to be diverted and the crew changes and all those things they are creating. But it is beyond, I think, anybody's hands actually. And some of the vessels, they were diverted just for no reason, because some of the crew just got the symptoms and they had to move out.
Yeah. Amir Mosadeghi, what do you have any comments as to the lessons that have learned from the pandemic, particularly around the crew side? What would you see that needs to be put in place to address them going forward?
Yeah, let me say that the real lesson from this pandemic is we have to expect the unexpected situation. Nobody would think that, for example, in the year 2020, we would see at home and do our work, or we will have our meeting or seminars like this through the net. Some businesses even totally lost and wiped out from the economy, and some other things came and they are in a very boom period. Insurance also is not different than other business. We had our employees working from home. certainly has changed the way that when they came back to the office. So I believe this digitalization, as Mr. Tarek said, is very important and very beneficial, both in terms of the operation and in the client side. So on the crew system as well. So definitely such kind of platforms can engage them more with the ship, with the company itself, and definitely with the insurance companies.
Okay, thank you very much. Amir, we've all had a chance to hear what everybody else has said. Does anybody want to come back on anything? I can see you've all been taking notes. Has anybody got any comments, particularly at the moment? Otherwise, I shall leap in. I mean, Julien, perhaps what I mean, lessons that have been learned. I mean, there's been a sort of theme that perhaps marine insurance to some extent has gone off lightly in terms of some of the commercial impacts, you know, compared with some other sectors of industry. But have there been any sort of setbacks that you think the industry needs to reflect upon and actually, you know, do things differently in the future?
I think from a claims perspective, I mean, I can only speak for the TT Club and what I've read from the various broker P&I reviews. But the industry probably has got off lightly outside of some key or a few number of large cases that have been complex and will go on for a while. I'm not sure that the industry as a whole, you know, was ready for it, because you've got to take into consideration where the industry was before the pandemic, and that's something that, you know, trying to adapt on multiple fronts, whether it's both the shipping industry and the insurance industry, we're going through some very interesting times beforehand. So the process they've gone through during the pandemic and reacting to the needs of the members, you know, where we come out at the other side and how we adapt and change to that, and the way we work for our members, you know, it's going to be a constant moving feast, really. We need to make sure that we keep the positives that we've learned during this pandemic, but then when we hopefully go back to a new normal, we get the best of the old and the best of the new and provide that level of support going forward. I don't think it's going to be a change outside of that for me. Okay.
And Mark, what's your perspective in terms of sort of the new normal? I mean, how does it look for your sector?
Do you mean in terms of how we work, or
how you work, how you well, yes, or how you work, or how you interact with other stakeholders in the shipping business?
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal, obviously, that we're certainly here in the UK and in many other parts of the world, we're still working from home and obviously meeting our clients, and, you know, and the markets that we do business with, other than virtually like this, is impossible at the moment. We're all hoping that will change, of course. It's very difficult to say what changes, long-term changes, I think this will bring to how we work. I mean, we're certainly speaking for Marsh, Marsh in the UK, we're all very anxious to get back to our office and begin to work as far as, in the same way as we always did, as far as we possibly can. I think but we will be a bit more flexible. We will all recognise that people can work from home. It's interesting as well that the you know, electronic closing of business in the London market, I mean, outside of the mutuals like the TT Club and Julien and the P&I clubs, but within the general marine marketplace, use of electronic closing platforms has risen from, you know, below 20% on all business transacted prior to the pandemic to pretty much 100% now, and that's you know, that's been I think that's a real bonus in terms of both the contract certainty that brings, because it's a very robust system in that sense, but also efficiency. Closing business is so much quicker via those platforms, and people get their evidence of cover and their invoices so much quicker than they used to before. So that's a step forward, and I think we won't go back from that. You know, so people will at least see in that sense a more efficient insurance system.
Okay. Mr. Tripathy, do you think that the same will apply in your operation in GIC, that there'll be how do you see the new normal for your insurance teams going forward?
We have a different perspective to the overall issue. For us, one of the major concerns is we are seeing the frequency of unmodeled risks which are not modeled, are increasing. I would like to draw a parallel to the aviation industry right now also. If you look into the aviation side, the hull war risk market is tight. But as a reinsurer, you cannot rule out the chance of when all the aircraft, majority of aircrafts are lined up in various airports, a terrorist attack cannot be ruled out. So these are the kinds of new risks that need to be modeled into the output that you require at this point of time. I would also like to draw your attention to the fact the recent Texas freezing issues, which again was not modeled by a number of insurers and reinsurers in the market and has created a number of issues. I would not say issues, I mean concerns which have crept in. So for us, going a step ahead from this actually shifts into a stress on your capital also. And these are huge. These are not small matters that can be ruled out. So for us, when we look and put this thing into the marine insurance perspective, we are also having a concern that whether we have taken all kinds of risks that might arise, whether there is a pandemic or not a pandemic, if more of number of ships are at a particular port and whether they have more risks at that particular port. We need to look into those things more carefully, and we are doing it at our end. We have started to look those things more closely, and to the cargo accumulation, as I have said earlier also. These are the concerns which we are addressing at our end. We find that these are new challenges, but we have ammunition to overcome them.
Thank you. Dr. Seif, do you have any comments about what your perspective about the new normal and also how I think the interesting point there was that there are some challenges anyway, but how you separate, if I understood it correctly, that how you separate out what are short-term challenges relating to the pandemic and what are longer-term challenges, perhaps relating to global warming and things like that. How do you see the new normal for the industry shaping up in your perspective?
Yeah, actually, the demand for marine insurances drive demand from the international trade. So the marine insurer has to take into consideration the movement of international trade. We have to analyze the future. But again, I think the main challenge in how to overcome this crisis or pandemic is to go for a new business model. This is creating a lot of issues like new training needs, for example, for the underwriter, for the claims handler, for the surveyor, how to handle remotely and how to adopt a new business model. Also, I would like to shed light actually on the impact of the pandemic. This may not be very related to your question, but it's important to focus on the moral hazard, because I think this situation is creating a high moral hazard in marine insurance because there is reducing in vessel mileage. Many vessels have been laid up already. There is a long period of storage in the ports of destinations or ports of loading. So this is changing the characteristics of the risk itself. This is one of the main challenges to be taken by the underwriter. It needs more prudent underwriting. So if we summarize the challenges and how to overcome, we have two types of challenge. We have challenge related to the underwriting, to the risk itself, changing in risk, or let me say three challenges. Underwriting challenge, how to underwrite risk in this situation, because there is a considerable change in the risk characteristics. The business challenge is how to secure business in the light of the international trade constraints and the reduction. And the third one is how to conduct business, is how to deliver the service. It's about the business model, how to create a new business model, matching the client expectation, matching the client need, and not harming the quality of underwriting and claims settlement process.
Okay, thank you, Tarek. Bimal, you had your hand up, I believe. Did you a minute ago?
Yeah. Clive, something new rather, I would say, instead of going into the negativities, I would like to add something more interesting. I would say we are now basically the new normal, actually. We are all working from home. We are able to take care of the clients in a better way. And wherever there's a good networking, we are able to encash it even in a better way, because in today's time, any of the companies, it's very difficult to approach any new clients. So the pandemic, people are mainly indoors. And as Mark rightly said, that we are all operating basically, quite a bit from home itself. So whoever has their own good networking and with the proper service, rather it is adding up to the business instead of going towards the downward side of it. So I would say that it's very comfortable working from home and servicing the client with a beautiful set of friends around you.
So a lot of things you wouldn't change.
Honestly,
Zarir, what I mean, are there things? Yeah, Zarir, you've got your hand up there. Sorry.
Just wanted to add to what Bimal said. There's one thing that's plentiful now is time. People have had a lot of time. There's been less traveling, so our survey reports are actually started to be read from page to page and not just the executive summaries these days. Can you imagine that? And the claims handlers have actually been following the claim that much closer. As a result, it's ended up being a better client experience, if you ask me. And just to add a little bit on what Bimal said, it's all good news. I am as optimistic as what Mark and Bimal have said. Just panning out a little bit, let's go back to 2019, the first half. The tanker market was doing brilliantly then because there was a lot of oil storage, etc. So the tanker owners have had a good run. Maybe not this year how it has, but last year they've got the coffers nicely filled up. The container industry for the whole of last year has had complete raking in. They've probably recovered losses of whatever years they've had, and it's been on the buoyant side of things. And the bulk market has just started sprouting out in the last couple of months, and it started being buoyant. Now, if the asset owners and the container equipment owners have had a good run, they've got better rents for the equipment, good charter hires for their vessels, it cannot be bad news for the underwriting world. The premiums got to be they'll be in a better position to shell out a little bit more. The risk and the claim handling has been better because simply people have had that much less time. People haven't had those pints during lunches in the claims handling worlds that we've had in the past. So people have sat down at home and focused more on what's written on those reports and how the claims have had. So the litigation has become that much less. Unfortunately, the lawyers won't like what I've said just now, but that is what. So it's all positive in my view, and I completely endorse what Mark and Bimal have said before.
Yeah, I'm sure there might be some lawyers listening in, but there aren't many of us who feel that too sorry about the lawyers getting a little bit less money. I think is that. I hope I'm not talking out of turn there. No, it's obviously a sort of an interesting world where operationally things have changed a little bit in the way that you're working, and you're actually all thinking about, well, these are things that actually we perhaps should embed for the future. Before I break for the advertisement section and go on to the audience questions, I'm just going to give everybody a quick chance just to sort of summarise what they feel. Dr. Seif, listening to what you've heard, what are the main messages that you've heard so far?
Sorry?
So I just wondered, listening to the panel discussion so far, what would you say are the main messages that you would take away from what you've heard so far?
Yeah, the main message that I think that the whole business model should be changed. This is a very good opportunity to apply the new technology because marine insurance actually lag behind another lines of business in terms of business development and using new technology. So I think this is a very good opportunity, not just to develop the business model of marine insurance, but to link the business model of marine insurance with the holistic picture of the shipping industry. So this will support the supply chain as a whole.
Yeah.
So I think this is the main message to be passed.
Yeah. Julien, what would you think, just from the brief conversations we've had so far, what are the main messages that you think you would summarize?
No, I mean, I followed up Tarek in many ways. The way we've adapted to work with our members, work with our brokers. We've had to learn these lessons quickly, and then we need to take these lessons onwards to combine the best and worst of what we've had to go through, and come out the other side. From a shipping industry perspective, my colleague Abdul, who sits in Dubai, came out with a great line, believing, is this the end of the paper bill of lading? Because all of a sudden we've taken a step change in increasing the use of electronic bills of lading. Is that going to change the industry for a positive and never change back? I think there could be some benefits if we can make sure that we don't fall back into bad and old habits.
Okay. Mr. Tripathy, what would you summarise briefly? From what you heard so far, we've heard Julien there talk about sort of digitalisation and paperless working. Is that something you'd highlight as being a sort of a key message?
Oh, yes, most certainly. I think the more you are going towards digitization and having turnaround times much more lesser than what you have at this point of time, things are going to improve significantly. As many of the other panelists have also pointed out, the work from home situation also has given rise to a situation where you can understand that wherever you are in the world, you can conduct your office and you can go ahead with your work. So yes, more and more digitization and the use of various digital modalities to conduct the business are there, and they are the future for the whole industry as a whole. And as others have said, a new normal is definitely in the offing, and we are all going into it with full preparation.
Okay. Mark Cracknell, sort of listening to your colleagues, your peers' discussions, what are the main messages that you would sort of summarise?
Well, Clive, other than the to repeat the point that it has been a hugely encouraging, I think, about how resilient the industry, the shipping industry, has been. But I would say, actually, in terms of the insurance industry, I don't know, I can't speak for the adoption of the paperless bill of lading, but certainly the London market has become pretty much paperless. And so to Dr. Seif's point, we pretty much have made that step already towards an electronic way of trading, which is, as I said before, I think somewhat more efficient, in fact, very much more efficient than what we were used to in the past. And it will be interesting to see how that affects things like the Lloyd's market, where face-to-face trading was the bulwark of that market, whether that will change materially when that market reopens in the future.
Yeah. I mean, Zarir, you mentioned about reports and so on. I mean, is surveying going paperless as well? I mean, are you seeing a sort of more paperless?
Yes. Yes, Clive, thank you for asking that. I was about to mention this when Julien and Mark mentioned about the ECF, the electronic claim file system in the London market has been dominant for almost a decade now, I would say. And we rarely see those wonderful claims handlers with the fat files in their hands walking from office to office, which used to be a common sight a little over 10 years ago. But all that has already been changed. So the ECF, for those who are not familiar, is electronic claim file. So survey reports are all anyways going electronically. The problem problem that we've had before the pandemic is that we've had questions of, oh, where is this mentioned in your report, in your 23-page report? I can't find it. Yeah, if you read it, you will find it. So executive summaries were read, conclusion paragraphs were quickly gone through, and the claims handlers used to be on the phone with surveyors to actually understand what's going on. So that's changed significantly because our work has started getting more and more appreciated. At least those who write an honest, long, elaborate report, a good narrative, have definitely seen the benefit of it. But to answer your question straightforward, survey reports have always been digital. I think 5 years ago, it's all changed. Hardly anybody sends anything by courier, unless it's a certificate, a kind of a valuation certificate which needs to be on hardback. But it's all positive because a lot of time has suddenly been spared in the commute, in the international travels, etc. So it's all looking good from a claim settlement perspective. People have understood claims better, and the settlements have been much quicker, in my view.
Okay, Bimal, do you have a final observation before we take a break? I think you're on mute, Bimal. I think you're on mute.
Yep. All right, sorry. As Zarir rightly said, I fully agree with him, honestly. And more than the pandemic these days, the more the concerns are. Earlier, we used to have Gulf of Aden problems. Then we started with Persian Gulf problems, the political side of it. Now the new thing started, Red Sea. So those are now overtaking all the other issues for the underwriters and for the ship owners. Compared to the pandemic now, pandemic has literally become a little bit of secondary issue compared to all these issues now.
Okay, thank you, Bimal. And Amir, last but not least, what are the main messages that you take away from what you've heard so far? Are there any key points that you feel are particularly important to stress?
Sorry.
So Amir, sorry.
Yeah, before giving comment on you, almost few months back, we had our archive as digital. Maybe half of that was the reports which we got from Zarir from old days. So that's why now it's good that almost he said that in the few 5 years we don't have any paper report from the surveyors. But I believe that digitalization is the main fact. And to reach to that properly, I believe all the organs of the marine industry, they have to work together to find the same language to implement it properly. The ship owners, underwriters, the ports, surveyors, correspondents, everybody are involved. They have to work together to understand this language together.
Okay. Thank you, Amir. Thank you to all our speakers for that first half. I think it was really fascinating. The message I take home is that the marine insurance business has, has sort of survived and more than that, perhaps thrived through the pandemic and has adapted, but is already thinking about what the good things it wants to keep going back when hopefully we're back to some sort of normality, and that the customers and themselves should see some benefits from that. So I think that's hugely encouraging. And we're just going to take a quick break now where we hear some commercials from our sponsors, but don't go anywhere, just stay where you are. And after about a 5-minute break, we'll come back and we'll field some questions that have come in from our audience, both while we've been online and also during the registration process. So just stay with us for 5 minutes and I'll see you shortly.
The winds of change shape the course of our industry. The waves are unpredictable, but we ride them towards promising shores when we come together and move in one direction. We challenge the headwinds and anchor our place in the future. We turn the tide. We steer ahead. We stand out, and we won't stop there. Because what matters most is the impact of our achievements. Impact that pushes us and inspires us to go beyond. We are Abu Dhabi Ports. We are united in our vision.
Even at our most prepared, danger is inevitable when we are floating into the belly of the beast. At Islamic P&I Club, we make sure you evade even the inevitable. Fly with us over the tides.
Well, welcome back to everyone. Thank you very much to our sponsors for those messages. And as I say, we now sort of come to the session where we field questions that have been posed by others. The first one, and in no particular order, and some of them relate directly to the impact of the pandemic on marine insurance, and some are a little bit broader, but I think they're interesting for all that. As it is, it's quite a tough one for you to start with. Have we seen unscrupulous people use the pandemic as cover for fraudulent claims? And how can the industry make sure it spots the warning signs? I mean, perhaps that's a tough question to start with, but what's your experience, Zarir?
My answer to this would be straightforward, Clive. This has not been the first down market syndrome that we've experienced. Every time there has been a recession or the capital markets have crashed, there have been these unscrupulous people who come with high expectations out of a claim file. And like in the past, like 2008 crash, etc., it has been exactly the same. The only difference this time is that people have had more time to argue. But when the banks have started tightening the screws, when the lenders, when the payments and the cash flows are being under pressure, people try to find ways to make that little extra mile from a particular claim. Whether it's reasonable, not reasonable, is not something that they think about. But the answer is simply yes. There have been a rise in those kind of people, those kind of intents. Particularly from the subcontinent and the Middle East market in the claims world, these areas have been having a reputation of there being a trust deficit. The good faith on which insurance is principally leveraging or pivoting around has been seriously looked at and is considerably compromised. However, it is a good risk writer, a good underwriter, a good claims handler, a good surveyor, a good loss adjuster. If the chain of that is well linked, these kind of people don't have a flight over it. But the warning signs are simply down market syndrome, and unscrupulous people start surfacing from nowhere. They don't understand. If those amongst who have high expectations of a fraudulent claim are listening, and they know who they are. Let me explain this. In doing so, there's a very big aspect of reputation that is compromised by them. If you unnecessarily drive a weak claim and try to argue upon it for too long, you lose the trust with your underwriter, your broker looks at you differently, and the market knows who you are. So the next time you go to the market looking for another cover, you will be going down with your pants almost to your knees, looking for a cover, and it's not a pleasant sight when that happens. That's all.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that very frank answer, Zarir. Julien, it's an interesting question. It's not strictly related to the pandemic, but something that happened during the pandemic. What lessons does the terminal ports business need to learn from the Beirut port blast? I think there was also an incident in Tianjin, wasn't there, recently as well, where there were some incidences. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's a big issue for this. The Beirut port blast is something that will have reverberations in the insurance industry. So I'd be interested in your comments.
Absolutely. Look, from a shipping and ports aspect, Beirut was obviously a very sad situation. In terms of what have we learned? I mean, we do have to look at a bit of a history lesson, because that cargo had been sitting there for a number of years. And during the time it had been sitting there, as you mentioned, in 2015, there was a large explosion in Tianjin in China that caused, I think it was about 173, 175 deaths. So that was from 800 tons of ammonium nitrate. In Beirut, we had about 2,700 tons. And it really asked the question, and the lessons we should be learning as an industry, and I mean, here I'm saying that we as the shipping and transport and port industry, is all about due diligence. It's all about operators knowing what cargo they have, will it degrade, what conditions it needs to be stored in. And then once we realize there's a problem, we need to, well, the industry needs to enable those people, the terminal operators, the warehouse operators, the port authorities, and then eventually the government and the courts to deal with the situation. I think there's been a lot in the press, and I'm not involved in the case specifically, so I'm going off public information, but there's been a lot of discussion about the fact that there were warnings, there were no problems here, and they weren't dealt with in a timely fashion. And in the week after the Beirut explosion, there were a lot of ports around the world asking questions about who was holding what cargo was potentially dangerous, because the cargo itself is one that's shipped all over the world. You can see Zarir smiling already. It is known to be a problem if not stored safely. So, from an insurance industry, it's not a surprise. Cargoes like this and much more dangerous cargoes are stored in facilities all over the world and shipped on ships. If you imagine an ammonium nitrate explosion on a ship would have a massive impact on a ship. It's the same in a port or warehouse. The difference this time round was that there was video footage of the explosion, and that the site of the explosion was close to a civilian population. It's arguable whether the industry is doing enough to learn those lessons.
Yeah. A question just from me, I mean, because just out of curiosity, when you saw the pictures of the Beirut port blast and the extent of the damage, it was horrendous. Will the scale of the claims that presumably result from that have an impact on premiums in the marine sector, or is it something that is insulated from the impact on premiums?
I mean, to be honest, I can only from a TG perspective, I'd value Mark's thoughts on this, but it's going to be a series of big enough claims, some insured and some not, and that's the tragedy. It's adequate insurance. We're often asked by ports, what is the right amount of insurance to buy, and it's very difficult to advise on that. Probable maximum losses, but it will have an impact on the local market, the regional market, and eventually some of that payout will come back to London, affect the marine market, I'm sure.
Well, Mark, you were invited in there. Do you have a comment that you wanted to come in? Well, to Julien's point.
I think Julien probably hit the nail on the head in some ways, in the sense that I don't think Beirut is a particularly large claim by the sort of standards of the catastrophe. One of the speakers was talking about Texas and the effects of that series of extremely severe weather, and that is likely to produce claims on the insurance markets, which could have an impact elsewhere. But I think Beirut is of not such a scale that it will. Partly because, as Julien said, quite a lot of what was there was probably not insured. A disaster, happening in a very unfortunate place. But from the perspective of the insurance markets, I don't think it will change a great deal.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Bimal, I have a question for you. Again, as somebody who's immersed in the Dubai market, do you see Dubai growing in importance as a regional marine insurance hub? And what do you see as being its advantages? Do you see it becoming a more important hub regionally as for marine insurance?
When it comes to marine now with the pandemic, yes, all the machinery in Dubai is available. There's a lot of potential in Dubai, but unfortunately, because of pandemic, and already the local market has excess capacity. So for the foreign companies to really expand at the moment with pandemic over and above is a little difficult, but because the government policies are so favorable that is welcoming everybody. Post pandemic, I think people will utilize all the facilities because all the things in Dubai have become so convenient for the operators. So I'm sure people will make use of it, and I definitely agree that yes, things will improve. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I mean, perhaps come to Mark, linked to that. I mean, obviously we've got Brexit and we've got sort of global political change and turbulence. Is London's traditional position as a centre of marine insurance under threat? And if so, who else stands to gain?
That's a very wide-ranging question. I mean, I think it's always challenged by markets. There are strong marine markets in Scandinavia. Obviously, probably perhaps the largest marine market in the world is the domestic Japanese market. London has a sort of continues to have a preeminent role on the international stage, and actually, in terms of hull machinery, it's probably increased in the last 12 months or 18 months because the Singapore market has contracted considerably, for example, and that was one of the biggest challenges to London over the last sort of decade or so. And a lot of the business which the Singapore hull business, which the Singapore market was writing, has found its way back to London in the last several months. So, London is, I think it remains a market of interest to international buyers of marine insurance. and it has a strong, there's a significant amount of capacity there and expertise. But that doesn't mean by any means that that other markets don't offer equivalent or even greater value, particularly when they have a specific local focus and a knowledge of their own marketplaces. So it sounds, the question is sort of phrased as if London is trying to be a dominant market, but I think it's really not so much that it's trying to offer a product which will be what some buyers want, but not necessarily all.
Okay, and I mean, you also got close connections with the Dubai market over the years. I mean, how do you see the Dubai market? I mean, how do you see Dubai's role in insurance generally? I mean, what's your perspective on how Dubai is emerging within the insurance world, and what more does it need to do to perhaps sort of strengthen or consolidate that role?
Well, I mean, the Dubai market certainly has a strong regional presence. There's no doubt about that, and has had for many years now, and I expect that will continue to grow. I think the market in Dubai has probably, again, contracted in terms of international capacity outside of the region, I mean by that. And I think that was, it's like everything else. I think that was partly because, and Julien alluded to this earlier, the market business rather was so much underpriced for a long time, particularly on the machinery market. Again, if we're talking about marine, that I think people withdrew from it because they couldn't make any money, and that was probably really the reaction of the Dubai market to most classes, most international hull business. I think the question really is whether So I think the role in the region that the Dubai market has will probably continue to grow. I think it's really a question for the local markets to whether they want to be a significant player in the international markets outside of the region, and that maybe be looking a bit more of an attractive prospect now as pricing has risen over the last 18, 24 months.
Zarir, you have your hand up, or your finger up anyway.
Yeah, just a follow-up question on that too, Mark, about the Dubai market. Do you see more and more underwriters locally taking a larger share of the risk, Mark, versus the capacity itself contracting? But you think the risk appetite and them going into international markets with the majority of the risk has changed, or do you think Abu Dhabi-based companies have got a better risk-taking appetite now? Do you think that has been a shift?
I think it's a progression. I think it seems to me I'm probably not the best qualified person to answer this question. My colleagues in Marsh's marine team in Dubai would be, I think, but my perspective is that the market within Dubai and the UAE has taken bigger shares of regional risks steadily over time, and that there's no reason why that would change or not even continue to grow.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so, because Abu Dhabi-based companies, underwriting firms have increased their size, and that's good for the market because they're more and more self-sufficient with their books, and they're less reliant on the reinsurance market.
Okay,
completely, and that's what I mean. Just final comment, I mean, I expect that the customers want a vibrant, competitive, local, regional, international market. They want the best of everything, and that's it's our job to try and bring that to them.
Okay, thanks very much. Dr. Tarek Seif, are you there? Or I'm not sure if you're online or not. Are you online? Dr. Seif, thank you very much. A question here has come in. I know you've had quite a good role with the academic side of insurance, so perhaps this is a very appropriate one for you. Has the past year shown a need for any particular types of training and education relating to marine insurance? Is that something that you feel has shown a need that the training and educational institution, and I suppose also, are we bringing in good new talent, through the academic side of things into the marine insurance sector? I think you're on mute, Dr. Seif. I don't think we can still hear you. No, I don't know if our back office team can do anything to unmute. Well, you don't seem to be muted, so I'm not really sure what's going on. No, I don't think we can hear you at the moment. I'll leave our back office team to sort of work with you. And sorry, Dr. Seif, we'll come back to you when we can hear you. Mr. Tripathy, quite an interesting question here that I think relates to something that was in the news, which is that the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India is reportedly in talks with the Indian National Shipowners Association to develop a P&I club in India. I just wondered what your view on that was and what the positive implications for the insurance sector in India could be.
Yes, I think there has been of late some discussions on this matter. And if you are aware, a few years back, GIC did attempt to have this institutionalized and start this work in India in right earnest. The regulator has shown keen interest about this. And for the all-round development of marine insurance in India and in the subcontinent also, I think the need for a P&I club out of India will be of much help. And once the regulator has shown interest, I believe that in coming few years, we should be seeing P&I club institutionalized in India and should be working. I think we have the infrastructure for that to go ahead and get this thing started.
All right. So it's something you see as being a really positive development.
Yes, absolutely.
Good. Dr. Seif, have you managed to solve the?
Yeah, is it okay now?
Yeah, brilliant, perfect.
Yeah.
Clear as bell, as they say. So yes, the question was around: has the past year shown a need for any particular types of training and education relating to marine insurance?
Yeah, actually, again, the breaking out of the pandemic, creating a new training needs for marine underwriters and claim assessors. We need more focus on the digitalization and how to use the new technology to serve the business. This is about the training needs and how to serve the supply chain through the IT solutions. This because most of marine training over the world is traditional training about underwriting, policy wording, market trends. So we need more focus on the technology and technology solution. Also, one of the challenges training now that the paradigm shift from the face-to-face training to online training. Many trainees, they face some problem regarding to the IT using technology, time management during the online training, adopting to unfamiliar technology. So all these challenges should be taken into consideration. Also, the very important dimension in the online training is accreditation, because many companies, many organizations locally and globally, they don't recognize, they don't accredit the online training. So we need a change in the understanding. We need change on the training needs analysis and training designing and how to design training, because the main issue in the online training is to keep it interactive, to keeping interesting, to attract the attention of the trainees. So we need many issues in training, starting from identifying training needs, designing the training programs, and how to deliver the training itself. So this is the main challenges created by the pandemic and training side of the marine insurance and maritime industry as well.
Right. Does your association have any particular initiatives in this area at the moment ongoing, or?
Yeah, actually, we start delivering some online training, online workshop, but not specifically in the marine, but we have in the marine insurance, but we have planned to deliver some workshops, virtual workshops and training on the marine side of the business.
Yeah. I think this whole
It is in
training.
the pipeline, but we will be materialized soon.
Yeah, I think the whole educational, the university academic system is going to change as a result of pandemics, isn't it? With hybrid learning becoming the norm. So but maybe that's a good thing. There's some positives from that. Zarir, another question for your good self. Has the industry started to appreciate the important role of surveyors more during the pandemic? I mean, I know you've always been important, Zarir, but do you think people are seeing you in a different light?
Thank you, Clive, for the compliment. I would say the important role of good surveyors has been significant now. What we've seen is the bottom scavengers in our market who were more of yes ministers, who were every now and then representing the claimant, stepping in and out, trying to counter the unprejudiced perspective of our work, the independence of our work, have had a big hit. So good surveyors have become more and more important. Good local surveyors who are present on the site, quick to respond, with a high service quotient, have gained tremendously during this pandemic. The industry definitely has started appreciating it because they've seen the advantages and the quality that comes out of a locally knowledgeable surveyor who's quick to respond. However, like I said, the overpriced surveyors, the higher bandwidth of surveyors have taken a hit because there is just not enough money in the market to pay them. And not only that, with the retrenching, with a lot of clients and a lot of local companies who were usually claimants for third party or with ship owners, there has been a dramatic reduction in understanding how a claim is run. So we often get calls these days of a claim file which has been dragged and dragged and dragged. So we put a finger, in fact, this morning I had a meeting. We put a finger down and we say that, look, you're just wasting your time and banging your hand against the wall. If it's not payable, we say it as it is. A lot of them don't like it. But a good, honest opinion is extremely, extremely appreciated in this market. That is my simple answer to this question, Clive.
Good, thank you very much. And I'm sure also the fact that people haven't been able to travel has meant having good surveyors locally is something that people, I'm sure, in all aspects of the marine business has been appreciated. Julien, I mean, one of the things I was reading yesterday in the papers about, that during the pandemic, that in terms of individuals, the risk of being scammed and all these cyber-related crimes has increased. And this question is probably quite topical in that case. And has marine cyber security threats got worse over the past year? I mean, have we seen a similar pattern of digital cybercrime in the marine sector?
I mean, I think I'm not a cyber underwriter, Clive, but when we talk to the brokers, the members, we've got to take into consideration that their use of electronic processes and documentation has gone up. Therefore, the combination of that and working from home means that potentially the exposure to doing things relying on electronics and good cybersecurity is increased. And so therefore, you're going to get people trying to take advantage of it. As lots of ports, NVOCs, shipping lines have moved on to a more electronic format, working from phone format, they've got that increased exposure. If they haven't had the audits that somebody like I know Zarir helped carry out, and they haven't put good processes in place and got the latest support to defend them from these attacks, then they're exposing themselves to challenges. We're asked for advice on this, and actually it's very difficult for a non-cyber expert to start advising people about cyber. But the risk of fraud and the attempts at electronic fraud, we feel we have seen them, and I'd say they are increasing.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got a very interesting question here just come through online from Jeffrey Bloom, as the chairman of the Baltic Expert Witness Association and arbitrator. And he says, I heard the interesting comment earlier that the Middle East underwriting market in the Middle East is reaching capacity. Isn't there plenty of funding available for underwriters and their reinsurance? If not, how might that be rectified within the potentially huge newish market in the Middle East? I don't know who wants to take that question on. Mark, is it something you want to take on, or Bimal? It seems quite a wide-ranging question, and I'm not sure which person would like to answer it.
Mark, may go on, no problems.
Thank you, Bimal. Well, I mean, I think it's fair to say there isn't a lot of new capacity around, but there's probably adequate capacity. I mean, insurance capacity is derived principally from two things. One is capital that people are willing to deploy in the market, in the environment of risk transfer, and the other one is reinsurance. And I can tell you that there's plenty of reinsurance capacity available. Whether the terms for that are attractive to the region's insurers is a separate question. I can't really speak for the availability of capital. That's probably something more for Bimal to comment on. I mean, it's how easy is it to raise capital for insurance businesses in the region? I couldn't really say. Others should comment.
Bimal, I'll give you the chance to add your knowledge to this question.
Thanks, Clive. Well, as Mark rightly said, the local underwriting capacity has increased tremendously compared to the past. Lots of big players are appearing now, even in the region. As Zarir rightly said, there are lots of nice Abu Dhabi companies who have got much bigger facilities available. They got much power in their pen, and at times, like our dependence on the international markets is reducing by day. And earlier we used to take the risk 100% to the international markets, and Lloyd's being the hub and all the other markets. But now, frankly, lots of risks. The people have a very powerful pen here to write any lines actually. So coming money from anywhere, of course, there's a lot of money in the region, as everybody knows. But then the power of pen has really become very strong in the region.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question stroke comment from Fetu Al-Zayani, and she says the panelists mostly agree on changing the business model and establishing a more forward-looking partnership between the maritime and marine insurance industries. In this regard, may I suggest that such partnerships could partly be directed to create incubators and offer financial support for promising innovations that could add value and improve the environment. There could, for example, be a claims tech incubator. I wonder, it's an interesting question around, is this the opportunity for startups and to create new disruptive business models in marine insurance? Julien, you're right in the centre of my screen, so I'm going to just pick on you. I mean, is there a fertile ground for, as in other industries, for incubator models and new startups and disruptive technologies? I think you're on mute, Julien, sorry.
Apologies, you're asking somebody that works for a 150-year-old company about startups. So, and I've worked for Thomas Miller Group for about 18 years now, so I may not be the right person. But what I did see from my time, all joking aside from being based in the Middle East, was that you do have this encouragement of people to try new things, and the free zones, the non-physical, shall we say, free zones at JLT, where people have set up offices, and Business Bay, where they are trying to encourage a more flexible way of working, is a good opportunity for people to try different things. During my time in Dubai, I came across a number of people who claimed they were consultants, not brokers, or they were facilitators, not insurers, or they were paper surveyors, which I thought was quite interesting, who didn't go and see things, but they gave their comments on other surveyors. So I think there is innovation in the Middle East, and that is being encouraged by the government, and I think that will continue, and it's important. But it's important that we make sure that these types of innovations are channeled and used in the right way. Because we as TT Club, we certainly work with a number of different types of surveyors, lawyers, brokers, and such. But we need to make sure the fundamental service they provide is fit for purpose to support our members.
Yeah, Mr. Tripathy, maybe I'll pick on you as well to answer Fetu's question. I mean, India obviously has got a track record of supporting startups and the incubators and so on, and it's something that's very keen on. I mean, do you see? Is there some merit in what is being suggested, that perhaps some funding should be provided for innovative new ventures in the insurance world?
I think yes. I think yes. And if you look into the requirement of capital for insurance companies as a whole, there are a whole lot of possibilities that are available now through alternate capital. I mean, there is, you have sidecar arrangements, you have different sets of arrangements for needing insurance companies and others. So for incubating a particular idea and giving shape to it for an overall insurance experience is not a bad idea at all. And yes, I see definitely there is a future for it. And sooner than later, we will see this fructifying and taking shape also.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll come back to the questions that came in advance. Bimal, this is one that we've sort of come across a little bit before. Is home working going to be here to stay for insurance companies? Are you all going to be sitting at home forever, or do you think that you'll be rushing back to the office?
Well, if you ask me, I would fully agree, because this is how it's going to be. This is the new normal, especially for the brokers and the people who can manage to control their offices from home. I think anybody and everybody will do that, and that is, I think we got to face it and accept it, that this is the new normal. And I think there hasn't been any less efficiency working from home. Rather, it has added to the service to the clients. Clients are feeling more comfortable, being served from home, because it hardly makes a difference. Like today, I think all of us, we are sitting in different parts of the world, and we are on one common platform. So that really shows. And the same way now, I think quite a few of us, we are working with people, all the underwriters sitting in different parts of the world by our Zoom meetings and webcams, So yes, that's a new normal, and I would fully agree with the whole thing.
Okay, Mark, I think you mentioned homework. I mean, Marsh, and I suppose is a question that I suspect the bigger companies are wrestling with at the moment. What's your take on how the world's going to look for insurance companies in terms of sort of home working versus office working?
Without wishing to sort of seem to disagree with Bimal, I mean, I was on a leadership call on Monday morning, during which the head of Marsh in the UK made it clear that it's our intention to get people back to the office as soon as it's possible to do so, as soon as it's safe to do so. And we think that might be reasonably soon. We feel that we are an office-based business, and that's where we thrive. I mean, I think we're surviving in the current environment, but we're not necessarily thriving, and we want to thrive. So, I mean, I think we've all, there are pluses and minuses to, well, there's certainly pluses to working from home. But there are a number of, as I see it anyway, a number of minuses. But I think I mentioned it before. I think we will, nonetheless, even though we intend to return to the office, we will take a different view on home working. I think it was kind of frowned upon, if we're honest, prior to the pandemic. People who wanted to work from home. I mean, everyone thought they were watching daytime TV, I think. Now we realise that's actually what happens. People probably work a bit harder. I think Bimal's right in that respect. But so we want to allow people more flexibility. And obviously, this is London is a working environment where most people commute over fairly long distances to get to their offices, and if we can spare them a bit of that, both the time, travel, and the expense, they'll be grateful for that. But we feel that we're a community, and we want to be together as a community, as far as we're able. Yeah, I think there'll be different philosophies at play. I think in the next few years, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Mr. Tripathy, I'm interested in your view on that. But the question came in for yourself. It was:
insurance is traditionally a face-to-face business. How are you managing without that? I mean, I suppose the question is an emotional one as well as a practical one. But how are insurance? You know, because it is traditionally very much a face-to-face business. How are things in this different world for the business?
Yes, I agree that it is much more of a face-to-face business, but this is a situation where you have to make the best out of what you are given. And under the circumstances, I think if there was no pandemic, then these virtual sessions and virtual meetings, we would have probably pushed it to the background. And we have at least not faced much of an issue on the virtual meetings and not meeting people face to face. Our foreign renewals went up quite smoothly on the 1st of January. And we didn't have much of an issue. I mean, though we are working out of 162 countries worldwide, with having 5 offices at various places in various continents also, we have not come across an issue where people have insisted on a face-to-face meeting and have not accepted the virtual meetings request. And yes, but I would say that when things have become virtual, it has become a truly 24/7 attendance at wherever you are. And wherever there is a request for a meeting, whether it is a US market where we start meetings at 9 p.m. in India, or whether it is some other markets in the Japanese market or New Zealand, wherever it is, we have to find a suitable work situation for this. And I think it is working quite well for us as a reinsurer. We haven't faced any problem, and we would take it forward as it is if given a chance to work it at 100%. And off late, I mean, till last 1 month, we are mostly working from home. And it is only now for the last 15 to 20 days that we have started to come to office fully. Otherwise, all the infrastructure were available to work from home, and it worked quite smoothly for us. Not an issue.
Okay, there's a question for Mark. In previous webinars, we've discussed quite a lot about how the pandemic has accelerated digitalization in and insurance. So there's 2 questions that are coming. I'll link them together for you and you can respond to them. One was, has the pandemic led to greater automation and digitalization in marine insurance? Do we need to see more? That was one question. And will advanced data gathering systems, stroke big data, be used more to enhance marine insurance products in the future? I suppose this is a is the digital world going to have more of an impact on the way which marine insurance products are developed and produced and the whole interaction between the chain?
Well, yeah. So I think probably 2 separate questions really. The first one, I think I've answered already, which is that I think we've seen the digitization of the transaction process in the London market. Go from sort of below 20% to virtually 100%, directly as a result of the pandemic. So, you know, the use of PPL, which is the London Market's electronic placement system, is now, I think, virtually again, it doesn't capture the P&I clubs nor, in Julien's case, the TT, but for the Lloyd's and what used to be called the company market, it's universally used now. So yes. The market has moved on fundamentally in that respect, certainly in London. The second question, I mean, there are a number of products out there in terms of enhancing the underwriting process by introducing more data, basically, without naming any names. But at the moment, I think that they're struggling to find an application, because although it's from a sort of theoretical standpoint, it's easy to understand why it might be preferable for insurers to have more data points from which to evaluate a risk. I'm not sure if that enables them to charge differently for the product at the moment. Maybe because the market is still a little bit unsophisticated in that respect. But you've got all these big data products which capture vessel movements, so you can see how a ship has been employed, where it's been, what cargo it's been carrying, how long it's taken to get there, that sort of thing, which is all, I agree, useful data about risk. But at the moment, it's very difficult for the insurers because we live in a competitive world. Even though prices for hull and machinery business in particular have gone up quite a bit as I said before, in the last 18 to 24 months, they still don't generate massive profits for insurers. And the minute there is any significant increase in market, it tends to encourage more capacity to come into the market and therefore suppress prices. So I think we will over time perhaps evolve towards these more sophisticated ways of analysing risk. But at the moment, although they're available to a fairly high level, they're not being used.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. And one final question before I round up. Dr. Seif, a member of the audience, asked about piracy, which I suppose we all hope to sort of disappeared. The question is it still on the high on the agenda for marine insurers, or is it sort of a fading risk? Do you have a view on that one? I mean, I'm sure it's something other people may have a view on as well, but is piracy still something that is a concern for the industry? Again, I think the mute button seems to be. That sounded good.
Yeah, it's okay now?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, piracy is still a concern for marine underwriter, definitely. Despite the decreasing in the number of the attacks and piracy accident over the world. So if we compare 2019 to 2015, in 2019, we have 162 attacks and compared to 246 in 2005. So in terms of frequency, the piracy attacks have been decreased from 2015 to 2019 and the first 2 quarters of 2020 as well. This is the last data published by the International Maritime Bureau. But in terms of severity, actually, it has increased because the average of the ransom is increased from $3.3 million to $5 million. So definitely, piracy is still a concern by the marine underwriter. Also, there is a change in the geographical pattern or geographical distribution of piracy attacks, because now the center of piracy is the West Africa, not the Horn of Africa. Because in Horn of Africa today, there is a high military presence, so the number has been dramatically decreased. But the west of Africa and South Asia still the main hot zones in the piracy over the world.
Okay. And has the pandemic affected the piracy threat? I can't see why it would, but I mean, has it had an impact? Has it shifted it? You say it's mainly shifted, or the whole, it's other factors have shifted the threat to West Africa and to other places.
Actually, I think in the reducing the vessel mileage and the high number of laid up vessels will definitely has impact on the piracy in terms of number of accident, not in terms of severity or the cost per accident.
Okay.
I don't have data so far.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, look, thank you to everybody. We're sort of getting near to the end of this webinar, and I think we've covered a huge amount of ground, and I think it's been fascinating to hear your insights. So I'm just going to ask for one final question, the same to everybody, and it's reflecting on the experience of the past year. I think there have been good things and bad things, and I just wondered, if you could tell me one thing that you're going to keep, and one thing that as soon as you can, you're going to throw away, if you get my drift. So I'll start with Zarir. I think you were you were the first off the blocks. What's one thing you're going to keep, and one thing you're going to you're going to consign to the bin of history as soon as you can?
What I'm going to keep is the amount of time I've been having to myself. I'd love to keep that. And thanks to all the traveling that's been out of my life, I thoroughly enjoyed my hobbies and my time with family. I'm going to definitely keep that. And I've already promised my good wife that I don't think I'll be traveling as much as I used to before the pandemic. So I'm going to keep that for sure. And what I'm going to dump as soon as I can is simply the time that is spent to try and make people who don't read enough try to understand enough of the claims business, try to ask silly questions where sometimes keeping a straight face and the level of patience that are required to answer those silly questions, being somebody who understands claim, I'll definitely want to dump that. I'll tell them to go and ask some of the seniors who would probably be available across the desk to them if they were working in their offices. Now they're not, to make that phone call to a senior colleague, to a senior claims handler, versus just picking up the phone and asking something silly to surveyor, to somebody who was a claims consultant, has become such an easy thing, but it has definitely taken a toll on our levels of patience, our time that we spend spuriously. I'd like to dump that as soon as possible. So guys who are handling claims, please start opening your offices and get your claims guys in offices so they can solve the problems themselves and not get on our necks to ask those questions. So I dump that, if that makes sense.
Okay, Julien, the same question for you.
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep, I mean, yeah, the ability to have face-to-face, even if they're over video meetings with people around the world, is something we didn't do as much previously. People wouldn't have accepted a video call. So we've taken that, and that's improved our connectivity with some members and brokers. While wanting to get back to the face-to-face side, it's actually something that we shouldn't get rid of as quickly as possible. We should embrace that and use it going forward. What am I going to get rid of? I had significant frustrations trying to get surveyors to the right places around the world. You know, I take the point that there are surveyors in every port in the world, but there isn't always the right surveyor in the right port needed. So the frustrations and the things I'm going to be looking forward to getting rid of is my inability to get the right person to the right place, because sometimes it challenges the ability to give the member the right service or get the right information back.
Oh, right. So Zarir might still have to get on a plane from time to time. But anyway...
He's going to have to get on a plane occasionally.
Mr. Tripathy.
Yes, I would like to keep the joy of rediscovering reading again. That I would like to continue again, which there was hardly any time to go through reading and do a lot of books which I had piled up but couldn't read, which I could do, and I expect to continue with that, pandemic or no pandemic. The one thing that I want to throw out is not only with me but with many colleagues and teammates also, is impatience. People have actually become more impatient during this time, maybe out of frustration or being confined to their home and not being able to travel. This is one thing which they have to understand now, that they have to develop patience more than anything else. These are the two things that I have learned during this time.
Yeah, I think we'd echo the latter one, certainly. Mark, how about you?
I'm definitely going to keep my suits and ties and suitcases, because I fully intend to be going back to the office and getting back on the road as soon as possible. And I think I'm going to dump the Marsh IT department, because we spent too much time together.
Yes, I know, but they kept us alive. But yes, it is nice to put a tie on, you know, from time to time, isn't it? Something we've missed. Bimal, how about you? I think you need to put your mute, take your mute off. No, Bimal, you need to. I think you're on mute still, Bimal.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Are you okay? All right. The best time enjoyed during the COVID is with the family time. So we'll definitely go to keep the values, spend the best time with the family, and spend, yes, a lot of time at home and work from home as efficiently as possible. And what I would like to dump is to get rid of the inefficient and non-supportive clients and keep quality clients so that you are able to serve them better, and the clients who understand you better, take care of them and support them and be closer to them instead of just wasting your energy in some of the people who are not able to understand you pretty well or who don't understand your profession properly.
Thank you very much, Bimal.
Thank
And last, Dr. Tarek Seif.
I think the main takeaways of the pandemic is to keep the enthusiasm and the ability to work in difficult time, and to throw over the traditional thinking that everything should be conducted on face-to-face basis and paperwork.
Okay, well, thanks very much, and thank you to everybody for taking up your time and giving of your expertise and your knowledge over the last 2 hours. I found it quite fascinating. You know, I think it's also quite interesting to see how different sectors of the marine industry have been impacted by the pandemic, and marine insurance has had obviously a different experience to some other ones that we've covered in the last few months. But equally, I think it is one that has adapted and is ready to change. And I think some of those changes, as we've just heard, will be permanent changes, and others perhaps will fade away with time. But that marine insurance is a key service sector for the shipping business, and has been there and constantly ready to provide the services that are so essential to the industry. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for everybody who's stuck with us. I mean, the number of participants, you know, that have stayed with us on a webinar about marine insurance has been very impressive. The numbers have dropped very few during the course of the 2 hours, and we've got a very good number still online. So thank you very much for staying with us, and thank you very much for submitting your questions, and which I think the panelists enjoyed answering in the second half. Thank you very much to our sponsors, Abu Dhabi Ports, ADNOC, Islamic P&I, and CSP Abu Dhabi, for their support. I think these webinars have been a very useful way of bringing people together during the pandemic and stimulating discussion. And so hopefully everybody goes away with some ideas or some thoughts that perhaps will be useful going forward. So with that, I'd like to say goodbye, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next webinar, details of which will be announced in due course. So thank you very much, and good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Clive, for lovely questions.
Thank you, Clive. Thank you so much.
Good to see you all.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.